My mom was a breadwinner, but my dad didn't really make a lot of money. And I think at the time, St. Teresa's was $9,000 to $12,000 a year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was kind of a big financial decision. And later, I think about 2 years later, my mom actually lost her job. So I had to get a scholarship to continue to go to that school. And they gave me an economic scholarship.
Wow. Mm-hmm. How much was finances? Did you discuss money around the table? Was it a tool? How was finances discussed?
You know, I was always fascinated with finances as a little kid. My mom, I would crawl into bed with her in the morning and she would have the New York Times and I would guess whether the stocks went up or down. And so at a very young age, I was very interested in that. And I was always very frustrated that my parents were so bad at finances. My mom was a bipolar alcoholic. And so for her, it was just, I'm going to go here and I'm going to travel there and just throw it on the credit card and who cares? You know, it was a very like laissez-faire type attitude when it came to finances. And my dad just didn't really have a whole lot of ambition when it came to making money. So I kind of watched my parents really struggle financially. Mm-hmm. And that kind of lodged itself in my brain is that I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make those mistakes. And later, as I sort of, went to high school and then later moved to New Orleans to study, get a master's in architecture at Tulane, I watched both my parents lose their entire retirement and all their savings.
What happened?
Kind of within the same year, they were trying to help people. My mom went to a cruise to the Caribbean, ended up in Jamaica and met a guy who became her boyfriend. He then came back to the United States, ended up getting on her bank accounts. And
wow.
Right when we sold the apartment in France, he ended up taking all that money and putting it in his account. She also did things like bought a record studio, and she tried to buy a building that she wanted to renovate to create, a live music venue, but didn't get the right funding and basically lost her deposit. So
it seems like you've been forced into a caretaker role.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
How does that happen? I mean, did you just decide that you had to step in and stop the bad decisions?
Yes, and I wish I could have stepped in just a few months earlier. But yeah, it sort of subsequently happened, oddly, within, maybe a year of each other. My dad had a house in Midtown, and he had 8 people living with him. Nobody was paying rent.
Wow.
And it got pretty bad. I was getting calls from neighbors. I was getting calls from the police saying, hey, they're selling meth out of the house. We've got people living here that are obviously possibly might not be legal residents of the United States. And so what I did was I realized I couldn't just go and kick them out. The police, I tried to take the cops there and they said, no, you can't do that. They're guests. So I had to interview each one, get copies of their driver's license, create leases, try to go through the legal way.
To evict them.
Eventually, I got some of them to leave. But I didn't get all of them to leave until I sold the house to someone else. And he started demoing the house and playing loud music and eventually got everyone to finally leave.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a whole process.
What type of burden does that place on you as you're managing your career, starting and running a business, balancing both sides of the equation? Because you still have traditional work responsibilities.
Oh yeah. So I was at Populous at the time, and I don't know if you know what happened with Frank Wright in Jackson County, but the property taxes increased and almost doubled, if not tripled. And I got a call from both my parents saying they could no longer afford their property taxes and they didn't have enough money in their accounts. And I will never forget when I got that call. I was at Populous and I just went up to a principal and started crying, and we went into a room. She's like, I'm going to help you get resources. And I realized at that moment that I really had to step up because my parents were about to be homeless.
Yeah.
And so it took a while because I didn't have the resources at the time. But that following year, I got a job which doubled my salary. And I was able to finally make some more solid decisions. So sold my mom's house, moved her into low-income housing in the River Market, sold my dad's house. I bought a small condo for him in Crown Center and got them to sign power of attorney. And at that point, they trusted me enough to take over financially and also manage their healthcare.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it happened like that, 2020 and 2021.
And this is right. And then we've got COVID. And all,
yeah.
Navigating all of this.
I moved my mom into that apartment at the end of February 2020.
Wow.
And then everything shut down. So I felt very lucky that I had gotten her, moved and settled. And yeah, it was not easy.
What advice would you have for somebody who's also struggling with parents that are burdensome?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it depends on if they're willing to work with you, if they're willing to see reason. I understand sometimes if you're dealing with like an alcoholic parent, like my mom, for example, she had to stop drinking in order for me to help her. And that was a decision that she made in order for her to come back into my life. And I think there needs to be mutual respect there. And I think it really helped her kind of go into a new chapter of her life. My advice is to lead with kindness too, because I realized the reason my parents had gotten into this situation is because they had not been around kind people, and they didn't have the support and weren't around people who are rational problem solvers, if that makes sense. They were both kind of with these people that were using them, and they thought that they were their friends, but they weren't. It was very like this emotional turmoil. So remove those people that are affecting them. That's number one. Put them in an environment where they are loved and feel like that it's a positive environment. And then set them up with healthy habits and make sure that they follow those. Working out, eating correctly, not drinking, things like that.